And it's
Mhm.
funny to me that we are sitting in a time frame where right-wing media and Trump himself are screaming about Biden's mental capacity while he was in
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
everything they
deflection.
scream, it is, everything they scream about is a mirror for what they are actually actively doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's projection. It's deflection. It's
Welcome to another episode of the Bloomburg Democrat. I'm Sally Taylor. This is my inquisitive younger brother, John Daniels. We are back for another week of talking about the crazy things that are happening in the world, and particularly in the United States.
Mhm.
And today we thought we might start with a reshared, it's not really a tweet, but a Truth Social post that
Mhm.
Donald Trump posted claiming that Biden died in the year 2020 and he's been replaced with clones and robots and all kinds of crazy
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
So, John,
Yeah.
do you, um, I mean, this is sort of par for the course for Trump
Yeah.
in that this is not the first time he's done something seemingly crazy like this.
Right.
Do you see this as a pattern? Do you see it just as part of his personality? Does this concern you at all?
Well, I'm not too concerned by it really because, well, let me qualify that statement because, like, clearly there's a pattern of Trump doing slightly more and more crazy type stuff, saying more and more unhinged things. But for me, like a retweet or a share or something is not exactly an endorsement as much as it is like, look at this funny thing I found, right? But that's how I used to share things online. It's like
Right.
sometimes I agreed with it, and sometimes it's not so much that I agreed with it, but that it was something interesting or a little bit weird that I found. But I would usually kind of preface it with like a comment of my own. And
That's what I was going to say. Right. That's
right,
the important bit, right? Giving some
right.
context for why you shared such a thing.
Exactly. And so it seems like it's lacking in context as to why he shared it.
Right.
And it's pretty crazy, just at face value, simply because I wish that we had the technology to clone people. I think that would be really, really interesting. And although we have had like a few reports of people having been cloned in the past, and these
Right.
people, their identity has been protected because, people might freak out if they find out someone's a clone. But after Dolly and that type of stuff, like some people tried to do it with humans, I believe. I
Right.
mean, there have been reports that it has happened, and and so maybe there is a slight amount of technology there in that we can replicate DNA and then create an infant that is the DNA copy of someone else, but they're not going to suddenly be aged 80 years old, right? So
Right.
I really wish
Exactly.
that we had the ability to have an android robot or a clone that we could just like completely make anybody that we wanted. I think that would be super cool. That would be amazing.
Right.
We're just not there yet. Maybe one day, right? Maybe in the
Right.
future we
Maybe
might
one day,
actually
but
have
still we
a real
won't be
concern.
aging them to 80 instantly,
Probably
right?
not.
To replace somebody with.
Well, okay, maybe not like 200, 300 years, maybe. Who knows? But
Well,
currently,
but
we do not seem to have that capability.
it
So
doesn't seem
it's
to be the case.
no, it's not realistic at all. It's just wacky.
Well, so the reason that I brought this up to you as something
Mm,
that does concern me
yeah,
is because it is a pattern in my estimation. And it's
yeah,
a pattern that we have been warned about by certain professionals. in the
Yeah.
psychology industry for years.
Yeah.
This is not just something that people are going, oh, is grandpa okay? It's not that
Yeah.
kind of thing. They've been seeing these patterns occur for a very long time.
Yeah.
And
Well, he's been this way for a very, very long time, like just gradually more off the hook, you know?
right.
I mean,
Yes.
I think Apprentice is when it really started to get like out of control. He started to get some real like people were kind of validating his craziness and making it seem like it was
Yes.
okay. And
Right.
that's really when he kind of started to take a bit of a nosedive. And I really can't believe that he made it to the highest office in the U.S. government.
Twice after an
I know.
insurrection.
He's always been this despicable person. Just always.
So there's two slightly different topics that we're dealing with here, although they're certainly interconnected. So the
Yeah.
one is his malignant, grandiose narcissism, which
Yeah.
is why he fed off of something like The Apprentice so strongly,
Yeah.
and how it's helped solidify that
Yeah.
already unhealthy personality pattern in him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, and the people who ran that show now, they openly say they regret ever having done it because they
Yeah.
recognize
Well,
how it also impacted his
well,
behavior in the world.
that's a too little too late.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
is a
come
bit too
on.
little too late,
It was
right?
despicable at the time. They totally went after the money. They only cared about the money. They didn't care about anything else. And so
Yeah,
their regrets are very hollow in my mind.
yeah. And then not only do we have the sort of the unfitness of his personality
Mm,
disorder that causes him to be so reactive and transactional, and all of the other things, fixated on people he
mm.
feels like he has lost to,
Yeah.
right? His Biden
Yeah.
fixation is just egregious, and
Yeah.
I find that Fox News really feeds that fixation. But there's
Well, they're
not only
parasites.
right, well, there's not only the malignant narcissism, but then there have been the long known oncoming signs of dementia.
Mm,
His father had Alzheimer's. He's got clear signs of it developing somewhat
mm,
rapidly as well. And
mm,
there have been professionals that have been warning against this for a very long time.
mm,
And instead of the press picking up on these patterns and and putting out an additional warning, they have actively tried to suppress the information coming up around this. So
right.
there is a book called, let me double check what it was. It's The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. And there
Mm,
is, it's 27 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess a president. And the woman who's primarily responsible for this book, Dr. Bandy Lee, even in his first term, was trying to put this warning out there to get press to recognize the signs. And she was really undermined in that she would get interviews scheduled, and then the higher ups within the news organizations would cancel those interviews before they ever occurred. Or she would go on
yeah.
ahead and do the interview and they would never release it.
Mm,
And so there seems to be a little bit of fear or complicity. I'm not sure what it is on the
mm.
side of media.
Well, I think there's the fear of losing access, right? That seems to be a very powerful force amongst news outlets.
And
Um,
he has used that force
oh yes,
actively.
yes, and especially when he's attempting to use that threat, that's when you should buck it the most, right? You should be, it's not going to phase us. Who cares? We're going to keep reporting. That's especially
Right,
when you should double down on freedom of the press.
right,
And but they tend not to. I think it's probably because of profit motive. They're not just worried about their freedom of the press; they're worried about their profits. And you know, I mean, and maybe it's even just not so much profits as keeping food on the table, kind of a thing, you know. But for the big outlets, I mean, it's not really that, right? It's profits. They want their
Well, do
advertisers.
we
They want.
actually have a free press anymore then? Can we actually
Uh,
point to our press and say we have a free press at these
I don't know. Maybe
major
not.
organizational levels?
No, certainly at the major organizational levels, I would say no. I mean, they're all influenced by money,
Right.
and they all are willing to do whatever it takes and say whatever they need to just keep the money flowing. So no, we don't really have much of an independent press anymore. There are a few outlets, right? Like Associated Press, Reuters, some of the other things like Vice, for example, or
Right. But of
there
course,
are a few of the
Associated
outlets.
Press lost their access to the White House for a
Yes,
period of
yes,
time, right?
right,
And it
yeah,
took a judicial action in order
yeah,
for them to be allowed back in.
exactly. And so
Over
this is kind of
this,
showing that the threats have a little bit of teeth, right?
right.
But you just have to stick to your guns. You have to stick to your morals. You have to try to uphold the Constitution. Mm.
Sure. Well, in the case of AP, it was over the presidency's insistence that they
Yes,
must call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America,
right.
even though the rest of the world still calls it the Gulf of
It's
Mexico, and
it's
they
like
are a
the
world
least
organization,
legally enforceable thing.
right?
That's
But
the
they
first
still
thing that I'll be
can.
like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
I,
But a lot of
I
people
bought a
did.
Gulf of Mexico T-shirt. It's still the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, you should have gotten one that said like Gulf of America, but where all the uppercase and lowercase are kind of like the squigglies where they're Gulf of America.
But this
Might
is
have been more
just
fun.
another this even this topic is another example of his malignant narcissism and being
Yeah,
a bully in
yeah,
order to get his way. But then we do have also the signs of degeneration in his mental acuity. And
hmm
it's funny to me that we are sitting in a time frame where right-wing media and Trump himself are screaming about Biden's mental capacity while he was in
yeah,
office.
yeah.
And
Well, it's
everything they
deflection.
scream, it is everything they scream about is a mirror for what they are actually actively doing.
Yeah, yeah. It's projection. It's deflection. It's don't
Well,
look
that's
behind the curtain.
narcissism. That's what occurs
Yes.
with narcissism, right? Is
Yeah.
they mirror back, they reflect what
Mhm.
they actually feel and are doing. And
Yeah.
so I do find that traditional mainstream media is complicit. It
Mhm.
is uh, independent media, which is generally
Mhm.
online sources, like,
Right.
well, there's lots of them. There's so many of them now
So lately, I've been
that are
reading
more
a
willing
lot
to
from
report on these things.
the Daily Beast. I find that the
Yeah.
Daily Beast often has a very kind of a level-headed approach to things. Even if you think, oh, they're very liberal. Yeah, well, they're not that liberal, but they're like they're kind of neutral, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, and it's interesting. So the doctor that I was telling you about, Dr. Bandy Lee, she was suddenly more visible before the election. She
mhm.
people were starting to pick her up. They were starting to interview her. And again, she was back on the circuit to try to warn that this is a problem. He is unfit for office. It's,
Yeah.
we can definitely look at going down some very dark paths if he's reelected. And then
Yeah.
the election occurred and she has yet again disappeared off of media.
Yeah. Well, I had
Um,
a little trouble finding anything about the crazy retweet there. I mean,
yeah,
like I
it's been
expected.
largely
When did this
ignored.
happen? When did this happen? Like
This
just
happened
a
two
day or
nights
two ago,
ago.
right? All
Yeah,
right.
2 nights ago.
Usually that shows up. Usually stuff that's a night or two ago shows up in my Google News feed, and this did
Yeah,
not, and I had to search for
right,
it. Yeah.
right. Well, apparently it is an old QAnon conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
That occurred a long time ago, and he is known to retweet a lot of QAnon stuff.
Yeah.
And he has said that he likes them because they like him. He has
Right.
said that out loud. So again, very transactional in nature, but it also
Yeah.
feeds the storyline that he really wants to tell himself. The problem is that storyline
Mm.
becomes more and more and more delusional over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
we're a little bit lucky in that he's so strangely transparent and honest at times, right?
yes,
Like
yes,
it's like he can't really help himself. He has to kind of out
Right.
himself every now and then.
Yeah.
And if he were truly about his wits, he would not out himself so often, right?
Right.
He would
Right.
be more controlled. Even Elon Musk sometimes can't help himself. He's just says the stupidest stuff. And and I find myself doing the same thing sometimes,
Sure.
I should just keep my mouth shut, but sometimes something is just so appalling to me that I kind of can't help myself. And we all kind of go through that at times, but the scale is different, right?
Yes. I'm not president, and neither are you.
No, no. Nor I'm the owner of a large social media platform. Nor am I
Right.
tweeting about super crazy stuff. So,
Right.
yeah, it's different.
So there is at least a couple of doctors. I think I've told you in the past that I follow Dr. John Gardner and Dr. Harry Siegel, I think are their names. And they
Mhm.
do have a podcast called Shrinking Trump. And
Uh,
so they are among the few who have continued to document these things as they have occurred and to talk about not only his personality defects and the way that's negatively affecting the nation, but also the declining mental capacity.
mhm.
And so I will say that it was interesting. I listened to them last week. They got their organization got banned from YouTube for a week. They had a strike put out on them for something that was finally deemed to be inaccurate, and so the strike was removed. But they were talking about the book by Trapper that came out on Biden
Right.
and how his decline had been largely covered up.
Right.
And interesting that that comes out after the fact. If Jake Trapper
Mhm.
had wanted to actually help the nation by
Yeah.
that information, he
He would
could
have
have
reported it
absolutely
as
said
news.
something. Yes. And
Yes.
perhaps even as well before Biden uh, chose to run for office again.
Yeah.
Had we had the opportunity as a nation to choose another person to elect other than
Yeah.
Donald Trump or
Yeah.
Joe Biden
Well, this
at a
is just
reasonable time
another
frame.
case of people putting their personal profit ahead of everyone else. Like
Yeah.
nobody really cares about anybody else. They just only care about themselves.
Yeah.
And we think this is so wonderful, even not just normal, but we think that it's an admirable thing to be constantly profit seeking. It's
Yeah.
not. Greed
Yeah.
is not any kind of a good personality characteristic. Like this is a terrible thing.
Well, and unfortunately, it's getting us the worst of leaders on both sides. you
Yes,
know,
it really is. Yeah.
people assume because I do talk about all of the deficiencies of Donald Trump that I don't see the deficiencies of Joe Biden, and I always did. He was never my
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
Was I
Yeah, I
forced
know.
to choose between the two? Yeah, I was forced to choose between the two.
Right, right.
However, he was always too old to run the first time that he did it. Well, the first time,
Yes.
the time that he
Yes.
ran
Yeah.
and won, he was
Yeah.
already kind of
Older than
beyond his
Bernie
prime.
Sanders, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
this is the thing that they kept saying about Bernie Sanders. He's too old to run. But then they just elect
yeah,
somebody older.
right. Well, and
Unbelievable.
thank goodness, knock on wood, Bernie Sanders is still sharp as a tack,
Oh, yeah, he is.
right?
I think he gets enough sleep, right? I
He
think he gets enough
must.
sleep because this is what it takes to kind of to stave off
Yeah.
Alzheimer's, and part of the reason, well, I'm a little bit afraid of Alzheimer's. I don't sleep enough.
Well,
Yeah,
luckily so far, John, it doesn't seem to run in our family. Maybe you'll be all right.
yeah, yeah. Maybe I'll be all right. I
There's
hope
other
so.
things we'll have to worry about. We have not we have not done well.
Yeah,
Clearly, Donald Trump is also too old to be in
yeah.
office because of
Yes,
the
yes,
types of decline, not only his personality defects, but
yes.
the types of decline that occur naturally
We have the
in older
audacity to
people.
have a minimum age for presidential candidacy. We should have the audacity to have a maximum age. Like you have to
Yeah,
be at
and
least
people are
35 years
talking
old.
about that. Yeah, people are
Yes.
starting to talk about that.
And you should not be older than probably 60, I would say. Like
Yeah.
if you're older than 60, then tough titty. You just can't be president.
Well, you just
Sucks,
got a good
but
chance of kicking off,
yeah,
if you're much older
yeah,
than that.
exactly.
And that causes a lot of disruption as well. And I do not want to be ageist. I am approaching those ages very quickly, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't want to be ageist. There is there is definitely a way to utilize the wisdom of our elders
Yes.
without requiring them to continue to fill the jobs that require a bit of vigor and youth in order to do them
Yeah. Mental
properly.
acuity. Yes. I agree. Like, well, having a minimal age of 35 is ageist. So we're already there. So we might as well just either double
Take
down
care of it on both ends, right?
or
Well, the other thing is that
just remove it entirely.
it allows the next generation to step up
Right.
and take on those roles at the
Yeah.
ages where they are able to
Yeah.
manage them efficiently and
Yeah.
to be at the height of their abilities.
Right.
And so we're not passing the torch to younger generations the
Yeah,
way we
no, no,
should
we
be.
never have been. We never have been. I've always thought I can't wait until I'm a little bit older and then like finally my generation will be in control. My generation has never been in control. Like I'm 40. How old am I? What year is
You're old
this?
enough to think about it.
I'm like 44, 45 or something. And and I just feel like there's still there's very few people in positions of power my age, and if they are, they're just generally asshats who have been doing everything they can to get ahead at stepping on other people's backs and stuff, you know? Like the typical slimy person who always manages to get ahead in this world. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not so super happy with the age gap that it's present in the government. It's not so very good. And this is why I like people like AOC. Like she's young,
Yeah.
right? And there are other
And
young
she's
politicians.
got vigor.
Of course, there are some other young politicians that I'm not particularly fond of. I don't really like Cory Booker. I think like his filibuster thing that he did, that was pretty cool. Like it
Yeah.
seemed like he was trying to do the right thing and he did his best. But he's a corporate dem and I don't like corporatists.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I've
that is the
disagreed with
thing, isn't it?
so many things that he's done through the years. Ever since he stopped being the mayor and he became representative or senator, whatever it is now, I feel like he's just been kind of going the wrong direction. And so
Well, it is
I,
that being bought by corporations, which of course the
yeah,
Republicans have been horrible about, and the Democrats are pretty bad about.
they're
So
trying to
we've
catch
got
up, I
corporate
feel.
Democrats. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like
Um,
they're trying to catch up, and I'm
yeah.
not happy about that.
So I'm with you. I kind of think perhaps an age maximum is appropriate. Again,
Yes,
I think it would take a constitutional amendment to do it.
of course, it probably would, and but we also need to do it for judges as well. A life-term appointment to the Supreme Court is insane.
Yeah.
Like you can even make it long because we want the Supreme Court to be kind of like something that spans multiple
Right.
generations of
But
presidents
there
and
needs to
things,
be
you
an
know. But
expiration date besides death.
yes, there does. Or there needs to be like a firing squad or something.
Oh, well, yeah, no, I can't go that far.
Well, that was tongue in cheek,
I understand. I understand.
but only partially.
All right. Well, we'll see if anybody else picks up on more of these occurrences or if they continue to increase in nature. I think they will.
Well, they will
And
continue to increase. Even
yeah,
as people pick up on it, it'll just keep going.
you and I had mentioned right before we got on that these retweets or reshares from Trump tend to happen largely at night. And there is something very connected to dementia called sundowners, which means that as it gets later in the day and into the evening, people with dementia get much worse in their symptoms. They get more aggressive sometimes, but they get more
Yeah.
conspiratorial and they, get more fixated on
Yeah.
these
Most of his
repeating thoughts.
crazy stuff seems to happen in the middle of the night. Like I think the
Yeah.
Kofefe or whatever it was tweet even was like
Yeah.
it was a late night tweet, right? Or early morning or something like when
You'd think
everybody
they'd
else
take
was
his
thinking
phone
maybe
away.
asleep. Yeah.
You would
Right.
think.
Or he needs to charge it or something.
Or something.
Well, I even read recently, I think it was Tulsi Gabbard who had said that Trump doesn't read, and so he wants Fox News style broadcasts to explain things to
Yes,
him.
I heard
Like,
that. Yeah. Tulsi Gabbard was supposed
whoa.
to be hiring
But
somebody to
he's
make it more
not,
like a newscast.
yeah, he's not illiterate because he tweets, right?
Have you seen the papers that he reads from, though, when he's actually giving a speech, if he's got something written on paper? It
No, I
looks a
haven't
lot
seen
like
it.
it's still written in black Sharpie,
Uh-huh.
and the letters are maybe this big each. And that's
Yeah.
not a
All
vision
caps.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, all caps and, really, really large. So he gets maybe 2 or 3 sentences about this long on a piece of
Yeah.
paper, and that's it.
Maybe it's
So,
he's dyslexic or something.
I mean, that's possible, but even if that's the case,
Yeah,
you know,
at least
uh,
then you'd be like a bit more, well, that's too bad,
you can
right?
forgive
You'd
that,
feel a
like
little,
Biden's
yeah,
stutter, right? Be more like
yeah.
Biden's stutter. Well, okay, yeah, we know he
Or
has
like
had a stutter, and he's
RFK's strange voice issue, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, like you can understand that. That's fine. There's no problem
yeah.
there. You can still
But
be a thinking person.
even in his first term, though, his people around him realized very quickly that they
Mm.
needed to keep the text as short as possible and show him lots of pictures.
Right. And not only just pictures, but like animations and stuff. This was something that
Yeah,
was in the article that I
yeah,
read recently. Like,
yeah.
it has to be like catching his fleeting attention, right? You have to
So the
really,
question is, even with those needs, is he qualified to be president?
of course
You
not.
know,
Of course
if
not.
you can't hold
I mean, most
information
people are
and
probably not
context,
qualified to be president. I think
right?
there should be
I'm
some
not
real
qualified,
qualifications. I don't think
right?
I would be qualified.
I'm
I'm
too
far too much of an
tender-hearted,
introvert. Yeah, me too.
right?
And I'm too much of an introvert. I don't want to talk to people, and sometimes I just don't want to go out. Like, I would not be a good president.
Yeah.
But I might be better than Trump.
Yes,
There are
I
very
think
few
that's
people who
true.
might be worse. I think there are a few people who might be worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need some better standards, I think. Oh, I saw this debate by a British college student and that one guy who he speaks really fast and he's a super conservative talking head guy on the internet. I can't remember his name right now. I just saw the video, but I can't remember that guy's name because I don't really give a shit about him. But anyways, he's a real dirtbag, and this really young British student was really giving him a run for his money in this debate. He trashed him. It was a really nice thing to watch. If you can manage to find it with my horrible description,
I
I
was going to say,
recommend
send me the
watching it.
link, John. Send me
Okay,
the
I'll
link
send you
and
the
I'll
link.
watch
I
it and
will.
I'll share it with our audience.
I'll send you the link. It was really good.
Okay.
Really, really
All
good.
right. Well, thank you for another interesting discussion, John. I'm
Yeah.
just sitting, waiting, and watching for
Mm.
even the Republicans to decide it's time to, put that 25th into effect, and
Well, you would
going ahead and
think
remove
that
him.
these are all people who are elected, and even if they're conservative, that's fine. They must also have some standard of ability to hold their
Yeah.
positions, right? And then, of course, some of them are from places where standards are just very low, and
Yeah.
but
Well, and we haven't
over
talked about the
it
fact that,
can't be all like it can't all be like that. So some of these people must think this is insane. What are we doing? And they must be willing to
right.
consider alternatives,
So
right?
let me just end this with one last sort of bit of history. We went
Mhm.
through the exact same thing with Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
He was experiencing, Alzheimer's, dementia towards the end of
Mhm.
his second term, and
Mhm.
it was kept under the covers.
Yeah.
So it's a pattern within government
Yeah.
that needs to
Well,
perhaps be the thing that gets fixed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No more puppet leaders.
Okay. Thanks
Well,
again.
thank you. God bless us.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.